our home was just filled with domestic violence, sexual abuse, and violence.
Yeah.
But as a girl, I knew some things were going too far.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of times where I just, the beating that you were getting from, your mom or your dad, it was just like normal. I was the bad one. I did something wrong.
Hey, thank you for meeting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
You're welcome. So you describe your childhood as a world without color. Can you tell me what that means?
Yes, well, I was born into an old order Amish home. And so there really literally wasn't color in that world because color was basically forbidden. And in my world, a world without color meant that obedience and compliance just equaled shame.
So let's go back to your childhood. What were your first memories of having to follow along with obedience?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Well, first of all, I'm the oldest of 8 kids. And so I think I was born with this sense of feeling really responsible for everyone. And I mean, that was also part of just the dysfunctional environment that I was in. Um, you know, Good meant being silent, not questioning anything, wearing my, little dresses that were either a shade of blue or a shade of green or a shade of brown. There really was. I remember distinctly being 4 or 5, standing on my tiptoes, like pulling down a dress out of the closet to wear for that day. And I just remember wishing that I had more colors to choose from, even though I'd never been exposed really hardly at that point to other colors and, more options. I just remember I wanted more options.
Yeah.
And I think I was, in a world without color, I was very restricted. I wasn't given options. Girls don't get to make decisions. Boys have more decisions and men have far more decisions than women get to have. But as a girl, I didn't get choices, and I wanted choices, and I wanted to ask questions, and that wasn't allowed.
Yeah. So would you consider yourself that you were a fairly obedient child growing up then?
Definitely. I was definitely, I would say that I was very obedient. And then you could ask my dad and he wouldn't agree. You could probably ask, parents, but in like internally, I just wanted to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be, good and, trying to be so obedient and holy, and righteous. And my family was cycling from, the old order Amish when I was a little girl to Black Bumper Mennonites, which is just to some other really conservative knockoff Mennonite groups, like from mainstream Mennonites, they were like more conservative, to the Charity Christian Fellowship cult. As I was older, as I was a teenager.
Yeah. So what were your teenage years like in that cult then? You used the word cult. Why did you feel it was that way?
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I didn't realize I was in a cult. I think most people growing up in a cult don't realize that they are in one. Obviously, you're very, for us, we were isolated. We stayed really busy. We moved every 2 to 3 years. So people never got to really know us very well. Our family was a little different than some of the other families.
Okay.
It was our home was just filled with domestic violence, sexual abuse, and violence.
Yeah.
But as a girl, I knew some things were going too far, especially if one of my parents, especially, usually my father, was beating a child and just start laughing hysterically. Something inside of me said that's not okay.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of times where I just, the beating that you were getting from, your mom or your dad, it was just like normal. I was the bad one. I did something wrong. And even as a teenager, that physical abuse was there, but it started lessening and it turned more into like psychological abuse and verbal abuse. Just, I think I was in my late 20s before I actually realized for the first time that I was beautiful, because of how much my appearance was picked apart by, the men in my family, but especially my father. Yes.
Well, you are beautiful. So
Thank you. I know I am now, but just that's just one thing that Emotions were another one. I remember the first time, down the road, and we'll get to this, but like having a paper handed to me in a therapist's office after a suicide attempt. And a therapist is saying to me, like, okay, so how do you feel? And I'm like, I don't even know. What is she even asking me? And she hands me a list of like little smile, little emotion emojis on a paper. And I'm looking at it and I can't actually relate to anything on that page. I can't, I don't even know what the difference is in that moment between mad and happy.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, so you were
I
very
just,
much
yeah.
brainwashed into
Yes,
thinking that
very much
things
so. And
would.
in my teen years, the other thing that was really just really detrimental were the mind games. Um, our father would like play mind games with us where he would ask us a question, and it really was a trick question because if we gave the wrong answer, it could result in a scolding, a beating, some kind of, psychological or usually physical punishment, or he would seem to be in a good mood and get us laughing, and or make a comment and somebody would laugh, and the next thing we knew, he'd be beating the foolishness out of us. So you never kind of really knew what was up or down.
Yeah.
You had to be hyper aware
Yeah.
because there were some better times and then some worse times. There was like a cycle that would happen, and I would think, oh, it's going to get easier again, and then it would just get worse again. There was a cycle, and I didn't even really recognize that it was a cycle as a
Yeah.
teenager.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was otherwise referred to as the domestic violent
Yep.
cycle.
Yep. The
Yeah,
cycle of abuse. Did
yeah,
you referred to some essay abuse? Was that within the home or was it from outside members in the community?
both.
Oh,
So with me, it was both. Within the home, I have really early memories of like that are very vague, and parts of my childhood are just blocked.
yeah, I'm sure.
Um, and then there was sexual abuse outside of the home with another member in the community. And then within our home, my sisters were raped at young ages, like, and my brothers and like just my siblings experienced SA as well. And yeah, it
It
was
was
very
rampant.
difficult. Yeah,
Was your mother aware of it at all?
she was. And I think it was maybe it was too much to. This is again where I have to work at not making excuses for my parents,
Yeah.
mother or father. In the past, I would say, well, my mother was abused because she was. My father met her. He was 28, or he was in his late 20s, and she was like 15, or maybe the first time they met, she was like 10 years old. She has a memory
Okay.
of that, right?
Yeah.
And so he's much older, and so she's a victim. But then, in order to survive, sometimes victims of abuse become abusive themselves and enable the abuse. And so that was happening in our home where abuse was being enabled, and there were definitely things also happening that she didn't know about.
hmm
But yes, she knew.
She knew. How has
Yeah.
that been? We'll talk a little bit about your leaving and stuff like that, but unpacking all this once you had left with your relationship with your parents, what kind of anger, frustration do you carry towards your mother versus your father?
Oof. It's a really, really raw one, because for up until my late 30s, or my mid 30s, I would have said that my mother's my best friend and my hero. And there's
Yeah.
many things I do admire her for, because she left my father with just the clothes on her back. Um, Once I was an adult, she got out, and I will always admire and respect her for that. What I really, with both of my parents, with my father, I started processing his abuse and all of that in my 20s. And I went through all different processes of therapy. Right, it's only within the past maybe 2 years, 3 years, that I've had to come face to face with acknowledging the abusive behavior of my mother and the enabling, um, and stop making excuses
Yeah. Not
and
protecting them.
resign from trying to protect and take care of everything and carry a responsibility on my shoulders that was never mine to carry.
Yeah. Yeah. She didn't do her job.
Yeah, parents are, and yes, they were both victims of the cults they were in, for sure. And it's not like I carry all of this really unforgiveness. I feel like I've done a lot of releasing.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I should justify their behavior, because they were adults.
Yes.
When they had us as kids, they had 8 kids and they were the adults. They were responsible to protect, to nurture, to guide. And yes, they were stuck in their own pain and emotionally completely stunted, but they were still the adults. Like, I
Yeah.
will be responsible. I am a parent now myself, and
Mhm.
I'm responsible for the mistakes that I make. And I
Yep.
have made mistakes that I've had
Yep.
to own up to,
Yep.
So that's changed everything, realizing, hey, I was the kid in the situation,
Yeah.
they were the adults. It was their responsibility to take care of me, not the other way around.
Yep.
But it took me
Absolutely.
until my late 30s, I think, to really actually really start unpacking the
Yeah.
motherhood wounds and
Yeah.
those deeper wounds. Yeah, it took me a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Might take a lifetime to work through everything, right?
I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we go back to when you decided to leave and what age you left at and how that happened?
Yeah, we can definitely just explore some of that. It's actually taken me a lot of years to understand what happened for me psychologically and emotionally during that time.
Yeah.
I didn't leave by choice, first of all, but I'm very grateful that I'm no longer in it. So
Hmm.
I was in an arranged marriage at the time at 18. The parents, both sets of parents and church ministers, approved for me to enter into like a betrothal with another member of the congregation. And within 4 5 months, we were married, and married almost 10 years. And they put the fault on my ex-husband for the excommunication, but really just there were people like that would see us going into Blockbuster. Hey, kids, remember Blockbuster? First time ever in my life going into a Blockbuster after I'm
Yeah.
married and I have like a little more freedom. And somebody thought that I cut my hair, and went to the movie theater. So it was like a whole bunch of really little, really petty, silly things that stacked up on one on top of another. And we were not willing to say, oh, we did something wrong and grovel at the feet of the ministers, because I was like, what did we even do wrong? Because there's other young people that have done the same thing. We're being picked on. Like, I was aware enough of that.
Yeah.
But I also had some part of me was wishing that my ex-husband would just be repentant, because, this is my whole life. These are my friends. And I had really good friends. I didn't really want to leave. I didn't want to just admit to things we hadn't done, but also like I didn't want to leave. So I think a part of me I definitely resented him because he got us excommunicated in a sense.
Yeah.
It's water long under the bridge. So now I'm grateful. But at the time, when we got that excommunication letter, because for us, there was like a series of meetings, and then we were renounced kind of like in front of the church while we were not there, and things were said about us. And then we got a letter in the mail, and it was signed by like, I don't know, 10 ministers and deacons. But some of these men I had actually gone to and confided in. I had viewed them as like father figures, because at the time, my home was still so physically violent, and I also wanted out of that home environment.
Yeah.
But I definitely trusted at least 2 of these men, and had told them, like, at that point I knew some things were not okay, because not all other homes were as physically violent or as dysfunctional as mine. I could tell.
Yeah.
And so seeing that list of names and seeing the names of men that I had trusted and been vulnerable with, and really like looked up to them, to
Or
see their names, because they were handing us over to the devil. They were cutting us off.
yeah.
That just really, really cut deeply. And so I just, like, my world stopped. I entered a really, really dark, depression that lasted for a couple years.
Hmm.
I had a lot of suicidal ideation.
Hmm.
And at one point, really did attempt to take my life, and, and eventually landed in the ER and then in therapy and, all that stuff. It actually started my journey of healing. But initially, just being cut off, like you get an eviction notice from your life. You get deported from the culture that you grew up in. You have to leave your country of origin and go somewhere where you don't even speak the language and don't even know how to function socially.
Yeah.
I don't think most people understand how drastic it is. For some people, it's like, finally, I'm free. For me, it was, I don't really want, I don't like everything in this culture that I'm leaving, or, I would have, not really realized even then that it was a cult. I don't like everything, but my friends are here. My home is here. And I have people that I really love here. And I like the way I do my hair with my little lace doily on my head and my long dresses. And I know how to sew, and I know how to cook and bake. And I don't really have aspirations outside of this.
Yeah.
So it's a little different when it's not your choice.
Yeah. Did you have children by that point?
I had miscarried, but I didn't have children.
Okay.
I wasn't even 21 when I think we got excommunicated.
Okay.
When I was 21, I think, when we got excommunicated, or close to it. Yeah, right around that age.
Yeah. So where did life take you after that when you got excommunicated?
We actually just left a few days
Yeah.
later, put our belongings in our vehicle, and drove to like 5 states away to like start a new life. And then we both got jobs, and we're just trying to survive. We're basically kind of homeless for a while. We lived in somebody's RV for a while.
Hmm.
But yeah, we just got out of the state. We just left and started a new life somewhere else.
Yeah. And how did the rebuilding process take? Because you referred to him as your ex-husband. When did that happen?
Yeah. Oh, that happened years later. He joined the military. Within the year of leaving, he joined the military because, a recruiter, I think, approached him at a mall or something like that. And, it seemed like a good idea because it was, financial stability and whatnot. And it was something that he, I think, had wanted to do. It was a appeal to him. I, again, didn't have a choice, because remember, men get to have choices and women don't. I was pregnant when he left for boot camp. At that point, maybe I remember buying a pair of jeans at a thrift store, and they were like, I would have been like a size 8, and I bought like size 16 jeans. I remember that because I kept these jeans for a long time. So they were like massively too large for me. And my first haircut was at a local Walmart, like when they had all the Walmart salons. I think they still do, but it's
Yeah.
funny to me now. The lady totally took advantage of me. She kept asking me, do you want your hair styled? Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you need this? Do you need that? And I'm like, yes, yes. And we're broke ex-Mennonite kids. And my bill at that Walmart salon 20 years ago was almost $100. And I was like, whoa. So I didn't go get my hair cut again for a really long time. I didn't know that, she was just upselling me and upselling. And I was just like, yes, yes. And I didn't know that, a $12 haircut was going to turn into $100. It's a funny story there. But yeah, he joined the military. We got stationed in Japan.
Hmm.
I lost 4 babies total through miscarriages, and one was a set of twins.
Oh,
Very, very
boy.
painful. And I felt very alone throughout those years. But then we got stationed in Japan. By the time we got stationed in Japan, we had a 1-year-old daughter who was just, a miracle baby.
Hmm.
And she just became my whole world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, my whole world.
And how long did you stay in Japan for then before you came back to the States?
I was there for 3 years.
Okay.
Daughter was 4 when I left. And that's when I made a choice. When I left Japan, it was by choice.
Hmm.
I chose to leave that marriage. It was a dysfunctional marriage. And I mean, we were just kids, there's a lot of hurt, a lot of just all the things wrapped up in that. And so, I made the choice to leave. And when I left, I knew I couldn't go home because there was really no home to go to.
Hmm.
My family, at that point, my mom was a struggling single mom trying to survive. and certainly wasn't going to go add a burden, become a burden to her.
Hmm.
And then of course family was just all dysfunctional, and then of course I couldn't go back to the people that I had known before. So I actually picked Denver, Colorado, and I knew no one here,
Yeah.
and I started a new life
Good for
in
you.
2014
Good
with
for
my
you.
kid in
Tough.
a little one-bedroom apartment. And
Yeah.
now I look back and think, how did I survive? Because most women from my background do not leave dysfunctional marriages,
Yeah.
let alone leave and go to a city where they don't know anyone and start a new life. And it's the best thing I could have ever done.
Good for you. So talk to me a little bit about what you're doing now and how your whole rebuilding your life with color has gone.
It's really going awesome.
Yeah.
I eventually just really I dated, I was a single mom for almost 7 years, figuring out who I am. I've done such a range of healing. Um, Healing for me has been part talk therapy, some, brain, neuropath, like neurology, like, what's the word? Neuroscience. My
Yep.
healing has included some learning about neuroscience and rewiring my brain. It's involved like somatic release, dabbling a little in some psychedelic therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Somatic release and art therapy have been by far the most helpful in my healing journey. And then just learning who I am, because as I unpacked this whole, I like when I deconstructed all of that shame and that need to be obedient,
Yeah.
it was like I didn't even know who I was,
Yes.
because shame was my identity.
Yeah.
And it's just taken years to like deconstruct that and just find who I am outside of that. I became an entrepreneur. I co-founded a brand. I walked the runway at Fashion Week with a bag that I designed, just
Yeah.
traveled the world
Yeah.
to find myself as well. And
Yeah.
so now now all these years on this side of still in the healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
I've been married to a wonderful man for 5 years, and we
Nice.
have a large blended family, and we are an interracial family. So my life is literally colorful. I create colorful art, and I'm in an interracial relationship. So my life is now just exploding with
That's
color.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. You must look back on your life where you are now and not even believe or recognize the person that you were before.
Yeah, definitely. I can look back at, but what the interesting thing that's happening also with healing, I saw this quote the other day that healing isn't just becoming the best version of yourself. It's also learning how to love the worst version of yourself. And for me, it's like actually like integrating now, reaching a hand back to that shame filled girl from my past and saying, you don't have to be afraid anymore. You come with me now and I'm going to take care of you. And
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
And I've you'll barely hear an Amish Mennonite accent, because I spent probably 10 years trying to speak like normal Americans and never telling people that I come from like any Amish or plain or cult background,
Yeah.
like like kind of whitewashing who I am.
Yeah.
And it was another shame. It was another shame and trauma like response to my upbringing. So now finding wholeness looks like integrating that pride of my heritage. There's many good things I can appreciate about my upbringing,
Yeah.
and even the pain has become a gift in some ways. And then just all of that, like embracing all of who I am, is like my current journey. We're still resigning from things that I don't need to carry. But yeah, it's a really beautiful journey that I'm just so grateful that for all the women that I have been before, and that have brought me like who here today, who I am today.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Before we go, I was curious to know, do you have any contact or have had any contact with your parents since you left?
Yes, like over the years I did. They left shortly after I left, and then, but right now at present moment, I am completely estranged from my father, and
Hmm.
not really, I don't know if I'm really estranged from my mother, but there's, you know, we haven't really spoken in about 3 years.
Yeah.
And, I'm exploring what it could look like because I want to have a connection with her. I don't know what that looks like in a healthy sense. And she chose to not speak to me. Actually, she's the one that chose that. And at first
Okay.
it was really hurtful, but then it
Yeah.
became this journey of going inward and saying, okay, what do I have to unpack here? Like, what is this all about? What is this dynamic and what's really going on here? So I would say it's a very tricky, complicated thing. I have love for both of my biological parents. Absolutely. I just do. And if I could have a safe relationship with my father, I would. And I'm hoping that I can develop a somewhat maybe healthier dynamic relationship, like a healthier relationship with my mother, where she is, what she's able to have with me. I'm not looking for fixing the past or anything like that. But, I think our interactions can be, kind on some level. That's what I hope for.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a complicated thing.
I can imagine. What about your siblings? Do you have any communication with them?
I'm really, really good friends with my sister. Like, my sister and I are really close.
Hmm.
My younger sister I don't live close to her, but, I love her. And she's, when we see each other, I feel like my relationships with my sisters are great.
Hmm.
And my youngest brother, the other brothers, some of them just don't speak to me. And, I think they view me as, being disruptive and, like, basically I'm a bit of a black sheep in the family, and that's okay.
Yep.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. You're free. They're not. So, um,
Yeah,
what
they're
are
on
some,
their own journey.
yeah. What are some final thoughts or anything you might want to add to someone who has had a similar experience to you, or is maybe still in it or just started their healing journey?
Yeah, I think for you being part of a cult, you, the person that's growing up in a cult, no doubt your value and your worth and your identity was to some extent wrapped up in fitting in and being obedient, and and how good you were. They could control you on, and if you were female uh, or a caregiver in some way, your worth and identity is probably wrapped up in what you can do for other people. I know it was for me. And so I would say, like, it's actually can be really scary to start to let go of, that need to be so obedient and so good and to take care of everybody. But be brave enough to start letting go of that, because you are enough and you are valuable and you are worth loving just as you are. You don't have to do anything to be valuable. And it's also not your job to take care of everyone's feelings and emotions, especially your parents.
Hmm.
They are grown and they're on their own journey. It's not your job to parent them or take care of them or look out for them. It's just not your job. And it's not unloving or unkind to release them and to resign from being their caretaker. That is not an unkind thing. You can maintain all the love in your heart that you have for your family and for other cult members that you still love
Yeah.
without being responsible for them.
Hmm. Yeah. Well said. Um, why don't I link, because you have a website where you sell your art and that kind of stuff too, correct?
I do. I have a little art
No,
website.
go ahead. Good. I'll link it below too. So if people are interested in the artwork and stuff that you're doing, that you're easy to find. And do you have a YouTube channel?
Yes. So my husband and I have a YouTube family. We're just documenting the journey of blending a family or just sharing our life. We don't post a lot because um, our kids wanted to do a channel. And so we were like, that would be fun. We also wanted to do a channel, but we weren't sure like what we would do. So we
Yeah.
recently started a podcast, but we started
Good.
out with the kids would just make videos and edit them and want to post them. And so like, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Um, Now that they're older, they're like, ew, it's so cringe. And I'm like, this is such a gift. Years from now, they'll be able to look back and just see themselves as kids having fun and, see some of the things that we've done together. And so, yeah, would love to connect with you over there if you want to be in that
Perfect.
space with
Yeah.
us.
I'll link that all down below. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for being so open to share your journey with me.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.